And we can go through the agenda very little to frame a little bit the session, no, and so you guys can have a little bit of understanding how are we going to divide it, no. Well, the welcome, it was great to share a little bit of each of us and to know where are we coming from. And now I will do a brief introduction of the bioleadership project and why are we here. Then Charlotte will share her story and her experience through the bioleadership fellowship. She came this year, and yeah, it's going to be really good to hear from her directly. And then Andres and myself, we will get into more detailed information about the course and the fellowship, the program, mini case studies, and how can it link to your organization if you are working in an organization, or how can you join as an individual. And then there will be some questions and answers, open space for you to just throw any questions. So yeah, let's start then doing a little bit of the brief introduction. Maybe we can take out yeah, exactly, great. Thank you, Charlotte. And yes, to frame a little bit, I would like first to share a little bit what is the bioleadership project. You might guys have read a little bit of it, but for those who don't, our mission at the bioleadership project is to change the story of leadership by working with nature. It's what Andres was saying before. We are doing this through 3 different workforces. We have the consultancy, we have the bioleadership fellowship, which is the 9-month program, online program that we are presenting to you today. But also we have the innovation lab with projects emerging from the community and the fellowship collaborations. It's really a living system at the moment, and it's starting and it's growing. No? So we have these 3 pieces, which is important to distinguish. And again, we always say that change can be brought by someone alone. So we try to create these spaces, to share knowledge, to creating this network of organizations, of projects, growing new generations of human systems and leadership that care for our world. And that's the main reason of the fellowship, to create those spaces and share that knowledge and connect between each other. So yeah, today we want to explain you what that bioleadership fellowship is, and how it brings tangible examples, like the one Charlotte is going to share today, in order to give a clear idea of how this program can support your professional development, and more precisely, the professional development of your organization. So, Andres, maybe if you want to add something else, it's the moment.
I think you described it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll say a bit more when I do the introduction
Perfect.
to the program. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. So yeah, I think the best way to start then is probably hearing Charlotte and listening to her, getting that first-hand experience. And yeah, Charlotte, maybe you want to go ahead.
Thank you so much, Javi. And yeah, cheers, Javi and Andres. A year ago, almost to the day, I was exhausted after a very busy 2021, and a couple of people had kept mentioning this funny thing called the bioleadership project to me. And I was thinking, I wonder what that is. And it's now lovely just to notice a year later, Javi and Andres are really good friends of mine and people who have properly steered me on my way and been amazing support to me. And it's lovely doing this call now because we were actually all together on a walk, a rare and lovely cold walk in Bristol last week, which was a really nice opportunity to see some people in real life, because this course is all virtual. And I've really enjoyed making friends with people around the world through the bioleadership program. So really special to be here, and nice to see some familiar faces. Lots of you I've promised to talk to you about bioleadership, and now I've just told you that I was conveniently chatting at this, so it's nice that you've come along. I'm going to share a couple of slides just to give you a whistle-stop tour of what the bioleadership program meant to me. And then, Andres will go through some of the details. So this is the story bit, and you'll get the kind of details in a second. So yeah, just to give you a little bit of a flavour, where was I this time last year when I decided to apply? I guess I was in the midst of a really busy working life, doing lots of really rewarding projects that I felt were helpful and useful. I was also quite tired. I was doing a lot of operating in some quite senior and corporate contexts. I find that deeply rewarding and challenging. but also sometimes quite draining. And I was also at a moment where I had lots of opportunities coming my way, and I was thinking, I've got to make some really smart decisions now. I need to be really clear on where I want to focus my energies. I know I've got some chances to sort of develop the leadership I want to do and kind of take it to the next level, but I'm not quite sure where to go. And I was really conscious this time last year of how tired I was and this kind of impending exhaustion. And, oh, I don't really know how I'm going to keep working like this. And I need to take a little bit of time and I'm not sure how. So that's where I was when I started the program. I think for me, what was my experience of doing the program? Well, the left-hand side, I'm afraid, is the guilty truth of what my desk can sometimes look like. Pretty busy, a lot going on. And what I was wanting was a bit of that space, which you might see on the right-hand side. And so what did doing the program look like? Well, it was a 9-month program. And it happened virtually, which is part of the beauty of it for me. I was really desperate to join communities that had a bit more balance. I found myself working in a lot of spaces where I was really craving different perspectives. And what I found through the portal of this computer was access to a community that was much more rich than any I'd ever been part of before. I really valued with the bioleadership crew the kind of true balance between global north and global south perspectives that I was exposed to. I loved the fact that we were all online, so we could meet people doing very different work in very different places. You know, I did meet amazing leaders on this program from all over the world, some of whom were running hyper local projects. A good friend of mine now who's doing a big rewilding project in Beirut, thinking about what forestry would look like across the Lebanon, right through to people based in offices doing big corporate gigs. So I really enjoyed the fact that it was online. I could meet more people. But what was really special to me was that I have a busy calendar. You can see it on the left-hand side. And sometimes squeezing in training online or virtual opportunities can be hard, but the brilliant thing for me about the bioleadership program was that the nature of the program and the structure of it actually forced me to take more time outside. There were constant invitations to block out time in my calendar where I would go alone in nature to reflect. That was sort of part of the homework, and that was the joy to me. So it added a new space to a busy year, and I found that signing up to the bioleadership program was like an investment in knowing I would bank some time to breathe, and that was really important to me. So what was it like? It's really hard for me to tell the story of the 9-month journey that I've just come out of. It wrapped up in November, so it feels really like, oh, it's just happened. And I could tell loads of different stories in lots of different ways, but here is just a little smattering, a couple of snapshots. So what can you see on the screen? On the bottom left, you can see a slide with a framework on. I love frameworks. I love like tools and logical systems and extra resources. I'm probably a bit of a geek, so I really enjoy having access to fresh thinking. I got a lot of fresh thinking on the bioleadership program. I heard from amazing speakers who gave me some really practical tools that I could start to use in my working life. The one above that photo, a photo of us in some rocky mountains. I got to meet new people I'd never met before, and I got to take opportunities to take time outdoors. The bioleadership program does run online, but there's also a whole network of supportive in-person events. These happen around the world in different places, sometimes led by community members in different regions. Some may be near you, some may not. But there's also many invitations to block off time in your diary to make opportunities for you to take time outdoors. This photo is of a retreat that I did. The bioleadership program also runs standalone retreats as well as this long 9-month course. And I took one to the north of Scotland in September. That was a really precious experience for me. It was a 6-day retreat. That was really powerful. What else can you see on the screen? You can see a photo of me taking a selfie on my laptop with some bricks behind it. That is my bit of outdoor space in the flat where I live, and an outdoor staircase. One of the things I discovered through the bioleadership program was Qigong, a type of meditative movement that I'd never done before. And I now have a friend who I met through the bioleadership program, and we meet online on a Tuesday morning and we do some breathing and movement together. And that little gift, that little window of time together has been so precious to me. And it's just been like, oh, I have this accountability buddy online who helps me do this thing that gives me a bit of a boost and forces me to relax. So that's a little thing. And you can see the photo below of some people practicing that Qigong in person in a circle. But my little digital way of doing that in my daily life has been really precious. In the top right, you can see a tent with not much around it. This is just a visual reminder of something that the bioleadership project really encourages, which is taking time to sit and be peaceful outdoors and to relax. And that's something I'd never not done much of. I grew up in cities and I don't really feel comfortable just sitting around in nature. I'm often busy and I'm running around or doing stuff, and I rarely take time just to sit and breathe and reflect and notice. And that's something that's been a real gift to me of this program. You can also see faces of brilliance, because I could have so many snapshots of different faces of people who have moved me and talked to me on this program. I think the people around me who've known me while I've been doing this course have often heard me tell stories of, oh my goodness, the person who came to speak to us today told us this, or I heard from someone who had this approach, I'd never thought like that. The quality of the amazing people that the bioleadership project has managed to attract and who are part of the faculty or who come along to give training has been such a pleasure for me. I've got to hear different ways of thinking from all over the world, and that has been really, really valuable. The other thing you can see on the bottom right is some delicious food. It's partly because it's a photo of a retreat that Andres was involved and Javi actually in leading, just a little 2-day retreat in some woods, and they cooked some really yummy food. But the reason it's there actually is to remind me of the kind of nourishment that I feel I've had from this year. So what I would describe this year as has been that it's been like opportunities to really like top up my own batteries, to take on some nutrients and some nourishment, and to find ways to have like really joyful nourishment. And for me also, that picture celebrates being looked after. I felt so looked after by this bioleadership community, and that's probably been one of the biggest things. So yes, I've had opportunities to hear from clever, smart, interesting people, lots of new frameworks. I've also had opportunities to meet people and feel in community, to build new relationships, to find new habits and behaviors that can strengthen my leadership. But the biggest thing for me has been this way to find my own relationship with being outdoors and how that can strengthen my leadership, my own relationship with peace and silence and relaxation, and just to let myself be looked after by some really smart and wise people. So that's a few snapshots of my experience of a 9-month whirlwind of a course. So where am I now? It's only a 9-month program. That might feel like a short space of time, but I would say the thing I've noticed is a little bit feeling more grounded. When I think about where I was on my sofa last year when I applied, I was thinking, oh shit, I don't think I can keep working like this. I need to find a way to pause. And I feel like this has really given me a chance to pause. As I said, loads of new thinking, some really big ideas. I have learned a lot about kind of systemic change. I've learned a lot about permaculture and biology and different dynamics I didn't know much about. And I found ways to connect some of these bits of thinking that I'd kept picking up on. The best thing for me has been this community, this new community to pause with. The sessions, I will always just remember noticing that each session began so calmly and with such an invitation to relax. So my busy days, I would block out these chunks of time for the course and kind of get myself curled up on a sofa with a blanket, and they would always begin with a slowing down and that opportunity to breathe with people and to slow down, but also to play with people. I've had a lot of fun with the people I've met, really honest and vulnerable conversations, challenging each other, but a real sense of play has been lovely. I do a lot of quite stressful climate work, and the play bit has been really precious. I found new collaborators. I'm now doing work with people I would never have met if I hadn't done the program. That's been amazing for me to find people to test some of the things I want to do with, to learn skills from, and to do different work with. That's been a real like practical, tangible output for me. But mainly it's just, yeah, new places for recharge. My batteries were feeling very depleted last year, and now they're in a much better place thanks to the bioleadership project. So yeah, that's my little mini share of how the 9 months have been for me, and a little bit about my story before we go into sort of some practicalities of what the course actually looks like. So Javi, when you're ready, I will share your slides, and then you and Andres can kind of introduce the course in a bit more detail.
Sure. Thank you so much, Charlotte. It's amazing to listen to you again and go through all that experience. I was also a fellow, just for all of you guys to know, and I went through the same process as Charlotte, but last year in the first cohort. Yeah, and it's always so beautiful to remind of that, no, and all that process. And so, okay, maybe we can go a little bit into detail. Andres, Charlotte, if you can share please again the screen. Thank you so much. Thanks for helping with this. And maybe Andres, you can go ahead and share a little bit.
Yeah, I can do that definitely. Maybe if you just stop sharing for a moment, I'll just give a bit of framing just before this one. I think we've got 7 minutes. No, we've got 7 minutes. Yeah. Also, I'm just at the end of a cold, so I feel really foggy. I hope I don't come across as very foggy. And if you can translate what I'm trying to say, that would be that would be great. Thank you. So the fellowship, to start, is from day one, or from way before day one. We thought, what does the world need? How can we be as helpful as we can? And I don't think a course does it justice. Yes, it's a program, it's an experience, but from the very first moment we said, how can we help to connect a human mycelium? So if that means anything, how can we help to create an experience where people feel plugged in to a network that nourishes them, supports them, where they feel they can connect information, tools, but also courage, fears, hopes, dreams, etc., etc. And I'm so glad. It's such a joy to say that it feels like that. It feels like a living system that's alive, and it feels like it's designed like how I feel nature would work. And by that definition, it's also a non-linear. It's based on like what is it that you need, what is it that you want to help grow, and then it's down to the individual to find a route through it, which is maybe not the most helpful way to start saying what's the program, but that's the philosophy behind it. To say a little bit about that. And then the other thing I wanted to say quickly as framing is, just 2 days ago, I was speaking to someone who was at COP in Egypt, and we were talking about what are the narratives that are out now, what's happened since then, and there is, interestingly, a narrative about how there are gaps in climate leadership. There is a need somehow to bridge a different form of leadership into different spaces in society and different sectors. There is also a need for what Christiana Figueres, who was so influential for the Paris COP, there is a need for convergence of solutions, to find ways to connect the dots, to meet across sectors, across spaces. And so I think the whole of the bioleadership project is about saying a better form of leadership is possible if we just listen to nature and if we work with nature, and that is happening. And it's also a space where people can connect across silos, boundaries, sectors, etc., to find a different kind of innovation. And that is, it's such a joy to be able to say it's happening, it's happening, and I can speak a little bit to that. So yeah, if you want to show the slides, Charlotte or Javi, sorry, thank you. From a learning perspective, knowing that this is sort of framed as a call for us as learning and development practitioners, we place equal amount of emphasis on 3 forms of learning through the process. A third of it is the intellectual thinking. It's about tools, models, principles that we know exist in natural systems. It's about stories that are being brought to life by organizations or projects or people who are showing that different forms of guiding human progress by working with nature are happening. So it's about, okay, this is how we would apply our hands and our head to doing things differently. And I think that's only a third of the kind of knowledge that we might cultivate by working with nature. The second form of knowledge is where we've got to with the bioleadership project, is to say, maybe the world doesn't need us to be more productive, more efficient. It doesn't need us to go faster. It doesn't need us to accelerate innovation. We need qualities like resilience, a capacity to see the bigger system, connection, adaptability, love. If we get more leaders, if we get more of the culture around leaders to say those are the qualities we want to see in leaders, then we'll be doing a good thing for the planet, I would propose. But you can't learn those things from textbooks. You can't learn those things from smart strategy presentations. We have to feel them. We have to experience them. So a second thread of knowledge that we work with through the fellowship is working with nature to rekindle that felt knowledge related to resilience, connection, adaptability, love, systemic awareness. Those are the 5 things I often say. So a lot of it is about stepping back from the thinking and being, and using and working with nature as a guide in that. And then the third is related to this idea of being a mycelium. Actually, the third form of knowledge is about saying, well, how do movements move? You know, how do systems change? And how do we see ourselves and place ourselves as part of living systems? What kind of knowledge do we need to help connect ideas, inspiration, hope, love, etc., to help new things emerge in the world? Yeah. So it's interesting. So the experience of being in the fellowship touches on all of those things. And then, you know, if you were to say thematically, roughly over time, you know, we start in February. These are the themes that we work with. We do a lot of good work around how to prepare. Preparation means, you know, working with what inquiry are you holding? What's the sort of shift that you think you might like to support in your life or in the world? But also, you know, work around how do we learn? How do we inquire together? How do we prepare to look after each other for the journey? So that's a theme that we begin with. We do some work on what it is to look to the unknown and face uncertainty, which is directly related to resilience. Then we do some work on, well, actually earlier from next year, we're going to do some work on what is the practice of working with nature more closely and why is it important? And it's really interesting that, you know, a lot of fellows who've decided to join are still in a place of like, how do I bring this into my day-to-day? How do I bring this into the city? And interestingly, it starts to touch on themes like power, positionality, lineage, land rights, etc., etc. So early in the process, we start to frame the why work with nature and how to bring practices of connecting with nature into every aspect of our life and work. And from there, we go into themes of reconnection with nature, regeneration, manifesting. So how do we manifest different forms of structure in the world? But that also relates to how do we face our fears, or how do we work from our strengths? So there's always a personal and sort of project or organizational dance going through the process. And then towards the end of the process, we move towards themes of integrity. How do we hold this work with integrity and with care? You know, how do we work with quality? The last cycle is how do we work with how do we integrate it into our lives? And for me, it's interesting because Charlotte said, you know, you said you wrapped up in November, but for me, that's almost just the beginning. You know, these are the themes that we bring us together in terms of language that help us shift our projects forward. But then the idea is, okay, we're a fellowship, so how do we keep working with this in many different spirals of life and work? So yeah, that's the overview of the themes. Bethany's a fellow here in the UK. I'm in Bristol, and she says, you know, the fellowship is a mature learning space where you live life as an inquiry that is self-directed with a diversity of content and embodied practices. And it does speak to the fact that it's really important, this bit. We invite everybody, even before we start, to frame a question or a project or an inquiry that they're holding, and to use that as a sort of torch as they travel through, you know, their journey and their work and in the fellowship. Really, we always said we want this to be an active process. I'm very much inspired by action research and appreciative inquiry type spaces where we say, let's ask big questions and grow towards them. And that's what we want to support through this. It's not an academic exercise. It's not something where there is intellectual knowledge that we then sort of invite people to write essays about. It's more like, right, where is this happening in your life, and how can we help you, and how do we help each other? How do we stay healthy whilst doing it as well as a big one? Yeah. I feel like I've spoken quite a lot. So maybe to just signpost very, very practically over the course of the process, there's different kinds of sessions. So there's core sessions where, you know, we join online, and they can range from, you know, 90 minutes to 3 hours, but always with lots of breakouts, with time offline, with, you know, time for journaling and sitting outside and so on and so on. That's where we meet the kind of core content and the core speakers. Every fellow is invited to join a home circle. That's a smaller group of typically somewhere between another 6 or 7 people, where you do some deeper peer-to-peer mentoring, coaching, learning work with a facilitator, with a home circle host. And then wonderfully, and this is where it starts to feel like a mycelium, like a network and non-linear, we have special topic sessions that are open to all fellows. So it's a chance to come and meet somebody who's doing amazing work in the world, and meet other fellows who are not necessarily in your cohort. So the last special topic that we had was on narrative structures and changing narrative, and we had amazing people from Culture Hack, who do very, very cool work on sort of, you know, how do you help shift narrative structures, as the name suggests. So all fellows are invited to special topics, and all fellows are invited to lab spaces and sort of hackathon type spaces where you bring your project, and it's a little bit like, okay, whatever help you need, we gather around you and help you out. You know, they feel like little workshops or studios. So you make it what you'd like to make it, you know, or you make it what is most useful for you. We recommend the core structure, but there are other opportunities to do other things. And the physical retreats is something that we offer all fellows. So reduced rates compared to what we advertise publicly, to come and be together at physical events, nature quests, and other experiences like that. What is happening a lot is that people are organizing just gatherings together. You know, fellows are just hanging out with each other, and internationally as well. You know, as a core team, we're here in the UK, but people are meeting in all kinds of parts of the world, which is amazing to see. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thank you, Andres. And I can continue if we go to the next slide. Well, we haven't shared many cases, but again, we have lots of fellows that have had really important shifts through the fellowship. Here, for example, Hannah Temple, she came to the fellowship with this project of creating her own consultancy and sustainability consultancy, and well, it was for her really helping space, to develop ideas and develop that practice. There is some quote there you can read, or also from Veronica Sousa from Brazil. Hannah is in the UK, but Veronica is in Brazil. She was working as a manager in Natura, and the fellowship helped them a lot towards the organization and how they were working together, different teams. And this connects with the next slide, and this is the opportunity what we also want to bring here. You can join the fellowship as an individual with your own project, with your own challenges. But there is also this opportunity to join the fellowship with your organization. And the intention is to create, to enter in the fellowship, framing or giving shape to a project that will help and will produce positive change in the company with your teams. We truly believe there is a lot of potential and a lot of benefit for organizations to bring some of their employees, some of their people into the fellowship, 1 or 2, to work through all of this month course and to bring all of that learning into the company. So in order to do that, and in order to bridge that, we also propose this extra 3 sessions of 1.5 hours throughout the fellowship to connect with someone in the organization, maybe with the manager of the person who is doing the course, and go through all the learnings, help them frame what's the project that they are going to work through the 9 months, frame it so to find something that it's a challenge in the organization or in the teams, and then through the next sessions, and by the end, another extra 1.5 hours by the end of the course to integrate that and to make sure we bridge all those learnings into the organization. So I want to stop there because we've gone a little bit farther, and I think it's now give the space for questions. it would be great to hear. So please go ahead. We have another 13 minutes. So yeah, I hope you
Thanks
enjoy.
so much, Javi. Yeah, so if you could, you are welcome to raise your hand or give us a wave. You can unmute. I think we're a small enough group, and you might have just a question about anything about the course or any extra details. Sarah, are you raising your hand? Do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. It's very inspiring. My question is, as someone who's, I feel like I've got some ideas about where I might want to go in terms of my own personal leadership, but I'm not within an organization, so I don't have like formal power, and I have a lot of inquiry questions going on. I've started to do some exploration with the All We Can Save project. Did a course of theirs, I don't know if you know them, in the US. So it's just opened the field. So I guess my question is, for people that are kind of feeling very unclear at the moment and who aren't kind of off, you know, doing big global projects and stuff like that, what is that, you know, how does would I fit in? You know, I think it sounds amazing, but I guess it's just, it sounds quite high powered, and, you know, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I was going to say, Charlotte, you might be a good person to answer that.
Yeah, Andres, you can talk to both cohorts, I'm sure. I can notice what was in mine. I think there was a mixture of people part of organizations and people who were individual agents. I work freelance. I didn't have a kind of organization who funded me. I funded myself, and I wasn't part of a kind of team. I guess I don't have loads of power in that way. I also arrived with a bunch of inquiry questions, and what I found really helpful was that I had support to shape those or to find what mine would be. One of the things that interested me about my cohort was I've found some people who were part of clear organizations. They knew they wanted to work for them for the next 5 or 10 years, and their project was to scale them. I also met individuals who were working totally on their own. I saw people who were like doing artistic work, you know, many different approaches to making change happen. And some were in strict big organizations. Some were people who were hoping to leave one organization and do something alone. Some were people who were hoping to get into a big organization. So I think the program, I've seen it work for people at very different scales, very different levels on a journey as well. So I think there's a real mixture. And I'm really interested in the word you used, which was high powered. What I loved about bioleadership was the range of leaders. So some people maybe did have a formal title or an impressive LinkedIn profile. Other people brought leadership in many different ways. And the thing that's been really interesting to me has been hearing people talk about how bioleadership has affected their leadership as a parent, or has affected their leadership in their community, on their street, in their family, as well as, oh, okay, I work in regenerative agriculture and this is the impact it's had. So yeah, I think there are different nodes and ways of doing it. But Andres, you've been part of both cohorts, you know the whole fellowship. I don't know if you want to just add to that. That
was wonderful. I had very little. The only thing, I mean, yeah, just along with what you said, is just that for me that it's the whole purpose of the fellowship is to redefine quality and progress, you know, and even a word like power, is so laden nowadays, isn't it? So what is it to invite each other to work with different levels of quality in our learning? And for me, what some of the highlights, if I think of the last both years, are when people have turned around and said, wow, I realize I can look after myself better and in doing the work that I want. So it's about the quality of exploration, I suppose. And then if it lights us up, it lights other people up as well. And the other thought that I have is I think it's about long-term thinking as well. Like one thing I didn't talk about earlier was that we are toying around with, and I think it's publicly like on the website now, we might only run another 5 cohorts, because we're thinking, what if we stop when we are 300 fellows and dedicate the time to work as best we can with that community and help them spiral other things, but you know, make it a thing that's about. We've got a little strap line that we haven't used so much. You know, how do we help the people who are caring for the planet to care for themselves. And so all of these things, you know, these things work in cycles, don't they? And inquiries change all of the time. But yeah, they're all just invitations to say, where are we at right now and what's going to be useful for me for this amount of time, and then it will keep evolving, I think.
Thanks,
you
Sarah,
both.
for the question. Any other points of clarification or reflections or questions? Yeah, Chris.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm keen to understand, how do people cope after the program? You know, when they're in a less nurturing environment and they might be exposed to hard power or, you know, the winds of mainstream thinking. Like, any thoughts on how you can support them or create a nurturing environment? Or yeah, it might be TBC, but keen to kind of hear what your thoughts around that.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, okay, go.
Well, you
No,
can
go, and then I can add.
I mean, I feel like that's for the idea of it being a mycelium and a community is to tend to that. So, you know, if you think about it, all fellows who've gone through the core program are invited to carry on joining special topic sessions, joining those lab spaces, which are very human, very honest, you know, spaces where they can say, this is what I'm working on at the moment, and this is the kind of like the tension that I'm encountering. So that support structure it's designed to sustain that support structure and to offer that safe space for people. And my dream would be that, you know, fellows choose to go on a nature quest once a year, you know, where they get to hang. We offer these retreats, like micro retreats, where it's just over 2 days, 2 nights. There's a fire, everybody gets to spend some time alone in the forest, and everybody gets to sort of spend some time in a circle. And they're really incredible spaces where, it sounds a funny thing to say, but a lot of fellows describe a feeling of being in family. You know, I think we cover ground that touches on honesty, vulnerability, you know, the real state of the world, but also hope and care. And so and we work rigorously with that as well. So when fellows meet each other, it's like, okay, great, you're a fellow, I get it, you know, and then you see people looking after each other in different ways. So we hope to sustain the structures to help people keep connecting in that way. But yeah, great question. It's the reason why, one of the main reasons why I want to do it, actually.
Any other questions? Oh, at the same time. Okay, Nadia, then Richard.
Thanks. I think Richard went first.
Oh, go Richard then.
Would be very happy for Nadia to go. But yeah, you're pointing at me. I'll go. I guess I'm getting a bit of a flavor. As someone who's about to go into something like very, very new, I guess I have a sort of it's not quite a question, but like a curiosity about the project, the nature of the kind of projects that you expect fellows to bring to the program. Just mindful that going into something very new that begins at the end of January, exactly what I would be thinking about examining through the program is still difficult for me to like try and crystallize out. So if you could give examples or talk a little bit further about sort of how do you take what the fellows themselves bring to the context and the relevance of that and the nature of that, I think that would be useful for me. Thanks.
Yeah, I can talk about that briefly, then Andres, maybe you can add some other examples. But for example, when I joined as a fellow, I was working in an organization. So I had this project around how can we change the design teams and the organization of how those teams were working, no? So that was very specific project, no? There was also, for example, a deep who was rewilding Beirut River, no? And he wanted to scale that and bring nature into the city of Beirut. That was also very specific. But there were other fellows who were more around an inquiry, no? For example, Wes was in my home circle, and he just left his job and he wanted to bring nature connection into leaders of organizations, because he was working on organizations, and he saw a great disconnection, and he thought that one of the main reasons all of these systems was not working was because of that lack of nature connection. So he didn't really had a project, he didn't know how to do it, but he came with that inquiry, how can I really bring that nature connection into the organization that he was working on. And it was actually when he finished the fellowship when he actually shaped that project better. And he had some ideas around a different business that he was starting and he wanted to run. So there are like different types of moments, and people joining with projects in different stages. I don't know, Andres, maybe some other that come to your mind, or Charlotte.
I've popped mine in the chat for time, but I'll pass to Andres and then maybe we can go to Nadia.
No, I think that covered it great. I mean, hold it lightly. It's the thing that came to mind, and I know some of the folks at Laudes as well, and Kelly Clark is a good friend and ally, and what an exciting space, to be somewhere like that, saying how do we bring more principles of nature in. So, there is right timing with these things, and to make it a live conversation with the organization, to say, hey, what do we need to bring? One thing is, we do a lot with Patagonia, and I just think, it's about helping things internally, but back to something Javi spoke about earlier, no one can do it alone, and we're not great at making spaces to step outside of our own boundaries. And I think that's what the fellowship can also help people do. It's why with organizations, Charlotte is, we had a brilliant conversation on Friday around, like, imagine if it's 300, and of that 300 people, of those 300 fellows, what movements would we want represented in that space in the coming 3-4 years? And I think that's going to be a very exciting thing that we start to work on, to be more intentional about inviting fellows that represent, organizations, movements, societies, etc., etc. So it creates a lot of excitement for me, Richard, what you just said.
Thanks, Andres. I'm conscious of time, and I know some people might have to leave at the half hour, so I want to give you permission to do that if you'd like. Javi, I can stay on for 5 minutes. I don't know if you can, if anyone else would like to stay in the space. I'm conscious, Nadia, you might want to voice your question into the group, but also want to give space for anyone who has commitments to log off if they'd like to.
Great.
And you
Awesome.
can get in touch with us as well, and follow the website to find more details if you'd like to. Nadia, do go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering, because for me, it's quite important to have themes around decolonizing leadership. And basically, I think the reason why we've got here is because of colonization and inequality. So I just wanted someone to touch on the kind of the themes that come up, for example, with ideas around regenerative leadership and those kind of ideas. Like, I'd like to hear about some kind of tangible examples of the thinking behind it, and whether or not that's kind of a part of it, because that's important for me in my work, that I'm really obsessed with that area. So yeah.
Nadia, can I jump in on that first, and then I'll pass to Javi and Andres? I had a real interest in joining this program around climate justice. I was doing a lot of work in education around how to connect the climate crisis with social inequality. One of the things that I was interested in how the fellowship covered was the relationship to power, and we had a whole series of sessions like unpicking different people's perspectives around power dynamics, which touched on things like colonization, decolonization, white supremacy, unpicking some of these power structures, talking about kind of extractive power models, and then what regenerative would look like. I knew nothing about permaculture models or anything before. I've got a rubbish understanding of biology, but I found it really helpful to see how some of that teaching connected into the regenerative practices that we were talking about. So I'd say it's present. This conversation around power, around injustice, and old ways of working is really present. But I mean, having an Andres can talk to more of the theory, but that was just me noticing that it did come up in the course.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? It's a really big one. There are a few different. Yeah. I'll try and be short with it. like the faculty is based around different parts of the world, which is really great, because we have Renata in Brazil, we have Shamista in India, and I think the way we approach the design of it comes from many places and not a center, which I think is important. And then I think we also do a lot which is about honoring knowledge that relates to nature directly, which is great. I mean, and my own learning, I got to learn with some amazing elders and teachers from different cultures and so on and so on. And then I think within that, what I've learned or what I've experienced is that it comes back to those levels of learning, really. Say something like regenerative. You can think about it in terms of circularity and regenerative leadership models and donor economics and so on and so on. But then there is a human level, which I don't think you can have I don't think you can have regenerative leadership without kindness or without an understanding of reciprocity and so on and so on. And then I don't think you can get into those things without asking questions of who you are. so it comes back to those three threads of learning, really. What do we think about? What do we feel back in ourselves? And how do we understand how we connect knowledge from different sources? And yeah, that felt like a foggy answer, but it's what came to mind.
Thank you.
There was also Michael, he threw me a question around the innovation lab, and I think maybe I can share a little bit briefly. Michael was asking, what was the innovation lab? And I think it's really connected with the fellowship, because from all of these courses, learnings, all of these sessions, fellows are connecting a lot and lots of projects are emerging. So we just had to create this space of innovation lab, we're calling it, which is system change projects space, in which fellows are going for a project that is trying to bring systemic change into their sector. We have, for example, one project called OD for Life, Organizational Development for Life, in which a bunch of OD practitioners are coming together. They have created, we have created, because I'm part of that group also, a maniflexo to set the principles of what we want to bring and how we want to care for life when it comes to organizational development. There is another group we are forming, and I'm part of that one because I'm an engineer, called New Habitats. And our intention is to change the built environment to care for the planet. Richard, maybe you would be interested on that one. As a built environment practitioner, we really want to bring other perspectives in the design and in the construction, not just human-centered designs, but also non-human. And how can we bring that? How can we create a movement that helps designers, engineers, architects change that and start developing other construction and other infrastructure? There is another project that is emerging now from another fellow, Benjamin, who is around education, and how can we shift the linearity of education, and how can we bring other experiences earlier in the process, and connect them with organizations that are taking care of the planet, and for those individuals that really wants to learn and really wants to help in those sectors, or those objectives, with those objectives, connect them and help them create a different type of learning early on, and not wait until you have finished your degree. So that's the innovation lab. Those are those spaces, and people can just join and collaborate. If you feel the call, if there is, wow, I can actually support that. And it's separated from the fellowship because it's extra work. It's different. It depends on the people availability. It depends on their energy. It depends, and they are creating it. For example, OD for Life, it's a settled movement already. They've had a physical gathering last year in the Netherlands, and they will run another one in the spring with then people from outside that could join and got into the retreat, and it's an ongoing movement. So yeah, that's a little bit of the Innovation Lab.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cheers. All right. So I think we might be moving to a close. Again, I can stay on for
recording in progress.